Naoki Urasawa's Monster. A journey like none other, a truly dark, yet oddly hopeful series at times. A suspense murder thriller set in Europe during the 1990s, it follows the story of a brain surgeon named Dr. Tenma and his fateful encounter with a patient named Johan, a name that I'm sure even without having read the series, you've at least heard of before. You know the name. A name that haunts and looms in the background of the entire story and is the key driving force to its narrative. Tenma's life is changed forever when one day he is responsible for saving the life of a young boy who had been shot in the head. He manages to rescue the boy from death, but in doing so, he prolonged the existence of the personified darkness of the human heart. With Johan's survival comes the death of many others, and not only does Tenma feel the weight of being responsible for saving Johan's life in the first place, but Johan continues down a dark methodical plan invading the lives of numerous people, causing a wide range of suffering, and causing Tenma himself to be framed for a murder, and has him spending virtually the entire run of this manga on the run from the police, while simultaneously trying to look for clues to track down Johan and put a bullet back into his head, this time by the very hands that saved him. But while hunting for Johan, Tenma is consistently unraveling a dark, twisted, and brutal backstory of where this man and this child had come from and the traumatic events that helped turn him into a monster. Though Monster is a manga, it is not written like, nor does it feel like any manga I have ever read before. Due to its grounded, realistic style and Urasawa's artwork, this feels more or less like a storyboard for a film or a TV series than it does a manga, and that's not a knock on it. In fact, the very fact that this manga has not been adapted into live action is baffling to me. It is perfectly designed and set up to work as a series that could probably last a good 4 seasons at the very least. Had it been, and if it were more popular enough in the mainstream, I could see this being talked about on par with the likes of Breaking Bad. And through reading it, I got some similar vibes between those two series to begin with. Both do deal with the darkness of the human heart and are a bit of a slow burn of a series that constantly ramps up. The art of this manga is really good, and like I said, it's very grounded and realistic, and there's also plenty of dialogue between the characters. Now, this may be a deterrent for some people because reading Monster, you really do have to read. I've heard people complain before about recent Hunter x Hunter chapters, by recent I mean released 2 or 3 years ago at this point, but of how much dialogue there actually is in the series. Well, there is a crap ton more featured in Monster, and again, it's more like reading a script at times than it is reading a manga. But it's not just all exposition, it's that they are constantly uncovering a mystery, and so every conversation and every matchup and shift of the characters, meeting and interacting, more clues and reveals are made throughout the conversations that ultimately lead us to the answers that we are looking for. But like every good mystery story, with each answer also comes more questions, and not one singular character, not even Johan himself, has all of the information needed to complete the story. So part of the fun is having multiple characters all on their own personal journeys meet and interact at different times and in different locations to pull the entire thing together. Each character gathers puzzle pieces, and it's up to us as the audience to put those pieces together. Having said that, to fully enjoy this series, you need to pay close attention and have some decent intelligence to back it up. And there are plenty of times where I had to sit back and think, yeah, this series is a lot smarter than I am. But if you have the capacity to stick with it and enjoy the journey, it will give you one of the best complete experiences you will have with a manga by the time that it is finished. In terms of characters, we have a lot of them. Tenma is our main protagonist, a Japanese fugitive tracking down Johan with intent to kill him. Yet Tenma himself is such a good-natured and pure character that the intrigue of this is how dark Tenma will be willing to go in order to complete his objective. Many times throughout the story, even when it would serve him better not to, Tenma is taking care of and looking after other people, the sick and the wounded, repairing gunshot wounds and taking people to the hospital, only to try to get away as soon as possible as to not be caught by the police. Tenma is the exact opposite of a character that you want to have in opposition to Johan, who is seemingly empty inside. A character that has nothing to lose and simply seems as though he wants to watch the world burn around him. Johan is a figure of terror and intrigue throughout the story, and the majority of the time he is in the background pulling the strings. whether he is manipulating other people through his words or pushing them in a specific direction. He has a way to influence the simple-minded and make a reputation of himself within the criminal underground. He can gain the trust of well-known individuals and assume different identities to better suit his end goals. And I'll get into the identity thing here in a moment. There are many other important characters to mention as well. Grimmer, seeming to be a fan favorite, is a man who shares a bit of a history with Johann, and as a result is unable to access his emotions in a normative way. The man fakes a smile almost constantly, as he doesn't know how else to hide the fact that he cannot express what he wishes, only waiting for such a heightened state of emotion that some other part of him takes over. Nina is another character on Johann's trail, trying to uncover his past as well as her own. And the secrets that they share together are more important to understanding Johann than anything else. Detective Lunge, who honestly I hated for the majority of this manga, he really annoyed the hell out of me up until about the final segment of the series where he really came around and redeemed himself in my eyes. But for what it's worth, he was the most determined to track down Tenma and prove that he was the culprit all along. And really, that's only the tip of the iceberg for the characters. Anna, Roberto, and many others play a pivotal role in the story, and there are times when the story will shift focus from one to another, each progressing in their own way in order to fully shape the entire story. I am a reader who enjoys characters more than anything else. You could have a great plot and great twists, but without characters I give a shit about, it won't connect. You're not going to care as much. Monster does a great job at making all of its characters feel important, and even more than that, feel human. Each character is struggling and flawed in their own way, and there are many morally great areas that are explored among them. Nobody is perfect, and none of these characters come close to being so. This is a good thing for the storytelling, and they make mistakes, they fall, they hurt, and they ruin their lives or the lives of others, whether it's intentionally or not, and we get a very good resolution for most of them. Some meeting a tragic ending, and some a more uplifting one. Now, without having dived into any breakdowns or interviews with Urasawa himself, I'm not trying to claim I understand all of the messages that Monster is getting at, but from my personal perspective, a large chunk of the story was about the idea of identity. To talk about this, I have to dive into some minor spoilers. I won't spoil the entire story, but if you want to go into Monster knowing absolutely nothing, this would be the point to click off the video. Okay, spoiler time. So, there's a children's story featured prominently in the manga called The Nameless Monster, one read by Johann as a child, and one that he identified with to a terrifying extent. Two twin monsters went in separate directions. The monster that the story follows goes in search of a name. In his search, he devours others, taking on their name, or more specifically, their identity, until the monster grew too large inside of them that it returned to its true state and continued on. The monster eventually went inside of a boy named Johann, but continuing to devour. When the monster inside the boy's body re-meets with its twin, the twin is still perfectly comfortable being a nameless monster, as that is just what they are. The boy consumes that monster as well. And now the monster stood alone in the boy Johann's body. There was nobody left who even knew who he was to call him that name. He was nameless once more, forever and always. There is a lot of emphasis on names and the importance behind them. In many old legends and folktales, it was a powerful thing to know something's true name. Some say it would give you power over that person or creature. But a name is more than just a literal name. A name is a legacy, an identity. It's the representation of everything that you've built and achieved in your lifetime. A name is what we attach to ideas, to live, grow, learn, create, and establish who you are in life. There is a saying that people have two deaths. One is the death of their physical body, and the other is when someone says their name for the last time, when their legacy has died out and they are erased from history. No one is left to remember them. It's as if they never existed in the first place. They are nameless, and they are all equal. All human beings, no matter what we have accomplished, no matter what our name is, we are all equal in one thing, and that is death. And understanding that is what I believe is the key to understanding Johann as a character. There is a deep-seated idea that we are all nameless monsters. that what we do and have done can all be ripped away, and we can be broken down to the point where we are devoured by our own monsters. The ones that live inside of us, the ones that will embrace the ending and quality of death itself. Some can be pushed there by words, some by actions, and some by breaking down the fundamental ideal for which they stand for. What does Tenma stand for? What is he willing to do with his good heart? The man who would save anyone who is hurt, no matter what, who wants to protect and bring peace to those around him, and whose hands are like miraculous healing powers. To use those hands to pull the trigger on a gun and kill, well, what does that mean if that happens? And this is the core of the conflict between Tenma and Johan. And again, this is just my perspective upon reading the story. Johan seemingly has everything under his control, but what his control boils down to is the underlying belief that everyone out there has their own role to play in being devoured by their monster. Whether it's watching an orphanage of child soldiers rip themselves apart, or burning down the legacy of an old man, or waiting, just waiting, for that bullet to be fired into his head. That sweet embrace of death that is the true equality that he seeks. Is Monster trying to say that that is just the case? That human beings are the monsters? I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think Monster is simply presenting an idea, looking at it from the blank canvas of a child, and one that never found an identity of his own. Because without an identity, who are we? Humans have emotions, sure, but think about how much of your daily thought process is just, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm horny, whatever it is, and how much else is just influenced from social norms. What is left beyond that, and who are you really? And how does what you've created in your life reflect that in your person? That name. And there is such complexity there, which is why you have so many different types of characters in this manga, from the superficial drunk Anna to a hopeful, encouraging lawyer and the self-loathing tragedy of Richard Braun, to the hero or fugitive or potential killer, Dr. Tenma. I think like many of the best stories, it presents it in a way where it's not black or white. We live in an endlessly gray area. I thoroughly enjoyed Monster for the story it was, and it definitely is unlike any manga I have ever read. It's been called a masterpiece, and I can completely understand why, but there are some things that I disliked about it. And remember, this is just my review and my perspective, so if you feel differently, that's totally cool. For me, there are times where I thought the pacing could have been a lot quicker, especially around the middle portion of the manga. I thought the opening did a great job at building the idea and adding in the tension, and I think the manga sticks the landing wonderfully. But there are more than a few handful of moments in the middle where the characters are having conversations, and I felt like, yes, I get it, okay, and it kept going on. There's also a deliberate narrative choice with how Urasawa leaves his cliffhangers on chapters, where he will end with a big reveal and then begin the next chapter in a completely different location with different characters. And then by the end of that chapter, it will sort of kind of link up with the previous chapter. But to be honest, it kind of annoyed me at times because the story would build and build and I'd be on the edge of my seat and super excited for the next chapter, which would cut to completely different events and different characters, and all the energy that I had built up would drop out and I would have to keep reading through different things in order to amp my excitement back up. Basically, it's a rise and fall style of writing, but sometimes the fall was so hard that it killed the momentum for me. Also, like I said, it felt more like reading a script at times, and I think I would have appreciated this a lot more were it a live-action series rather than reading it. It could benefit a lot from adding in other factors like actors and music and moving camera work to keep the engagement. Now, I know there is an anime version, and I have watched a little bit of it, and I definitely prefer it in that way than in the manga form. And I know that might be blasphemous for some people, and I'm sorry. And trust me, it's even weird to me because usually seinen manga is way better in manga form than it is in its anime counterparts. But in the case of Monster, I think I might have preferred to watch the anime instead. And lastly, because this had been hyped up so much, I think I was just expecting to come out of this putting it in my top 10 or even top 5 favorite manga of all time. But it's not quite there. It's close, I mean it's up there, and if I were making a list of the top 10 best written manga, like an objective list and not a personal favorite ranking, Monster would definitely be in the top 10. But as far as my personal favorite manga, it didn't crack the top 10 for me, so I'm sorry guys if you were expecting that. However, do not let any of my criticisms deter you from the fact that I truly did enjoy and adore this manga and the journey that it took me on. I think this is hands down one of the most unique quality stories written in a manga/comic book format. And the fact that I can see this series being so popular if it was just more well known, in the mainstream I mean, this is the kind of property that HBO Max or Amazon Prime needs to get their hands on and adapt immediately. But as it stands, I can see why it is hailed as one of the best manga out there, and it was certainly one I was happy to have read. Also, yeah, just a quick side note, to those who were watching my individual monster reviews, I am sorry I did not continue them. The fact of the matter is, they just didn't get views, and YouTube has this evil thing called the algorithm. Maybe they should call it the Johan. Anyways, when you put out multiple videos in a row that do poorly on YouTube, it begins to hide them from your audience and doesn't share them. So basically, the more badly viewed videos you put out consistently, the worse it is for your channel overall. Since nobody was watching them, they got hidden, and had I continued to put out more, then YouTube would have started hiding my other videos as well, and I didn't want to take that chance. So I apologize for not completing the series in that way, but as YouTube becomes more and more of an important and valuable part of my future, I have to consider the building of the channel overall and doing what will both bring in views and be something I enjoy making. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have read or watched Monster, please put all your comments and thoughts down below. Remember, all interaction with the video does help it be seen in the Johan, so please like, comment, click the bell notification, and if you're feeling really frisky, check out the links in my description for the merch store, Patreon, and various social media links. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.